Dear friends, let's enjoy 3 sounds of the bell. Just noticing the position of our body, noticing the feelings, the sensations, contact with Mother Earth, the air on our skin, the breath flowing in and out. And we allow the sound of the bell just to be like a guide that the mind can ride on the sound of the bell back to the present moment. Whenever the mind wanders, we allow the sound of the bell to bring us back to the sensations in our body, the breath. Dear friends, good morning. Today is the 25th of June, and we are on the second day of our, what are we calling this? Climate Action Retreat? I don't know. We're not sure what we're calling it. It's a great joy to be together. We are in the still water hall in the upper hamlet, Plum village in France. And I feel like this mic is quite fuzzy, huh? It's a little bit noisy. Maybe. Turn it on again. And now? A little bit better, huh? What do we think? Tight? Is this? Tech support. I can just use this. Yeah. Mysterious. Now it's okay, huh? All right, we'll go with it. It's a little bit of cosmic fuzz. No, too much. That's better. Okay. So this is now just an accessory, like jewelry or something. Um, so, dear friends, it is so wonderful to be together. It's quite miraculous in a sense. I feel like this gathering is so many conditions have come together to allow us to be here. So much dreaming, so many, so much kind of visioning of what may be possible, and yeah, I like just noticing how remarkable it is that this collection of bright souls is here together in one place. Yeah, I think it's something that we can all kind of allow our nervous systems to settle into and to notice, just noticing, this is remarkable. We're very fortunate. Today, we thought it would be a good idea to share a little bit about emotions, especially strong emotions, and how to handle them skillfully. And we know that, well, resilience is a word that's often used in this context. And we know that our ability to deal with stress, with fear, with despair, even panic, is somehow crucial to everything that we are doing right now, to the situation that we are facing. And it's often the part that's a little bit neglected when we think about what we are facing. The human element and how we respond to the situation is sometimes neglected. So we really want to take care of that human element and see if there's a way that together we can grow our capacity to touch the stillness in the midst of the storm. Our capacity to even touch joy and freedom and peace, whilst knowing what we know, whilst knowing what we face. And it's very hard. I think, in a sense, it's hard enough already just to be a human being, right? I mean, there are many challenges just navigating relationships, our relationships with our parents, with our loved ones, with our colleagues, with our children, with our professional ambitions, with our path in our life, with just making a living sometimes. I mean, that's hard enough. And yet somehow we have the good fortune to be manifesting in a moment of human history where the challenge is even greater than that. On top of all of that, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, we are facing a kind of, a situation maybe that our species has never faced before. A combination of different interacting crises, and knowing that it can be very, very overwhelming. And so what we want to do today is to see if we can find a way to be with that feeling of potentially sometimes being overwhelmed, and find a way to to be with that feeling and still be able to smile and still be able to touch our freedom. And that's not because we want to ignore the feeling or bypass it or pretend that everything's fine. It's because we know that how we show up for ourselves and for each other also makes a difference. And that our quality of being is also contributing to the situation that we're in. And we shouldn't underestimate that. I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of peace, the power of stillness, the power of joy even. We know that we want to be able to transform collective consciousness. We talk about that a lot. We want to somehow change our collective worldview even. We want to be able to awaken something in the collective consciousness, a different way of being in relationship with Mother Earth. There's a sense that maybe there are things about our worldview that are contributing to the crisis that we're in. And that if we could change that worldview and come into a relationship of reverence for life, reverence for the living planet of which we are a part, then perhaps that would be transformative as well. So we know we're in the business of transforming consciousness. But what then is our understanding of consciousness? It's it's very difficult to pin down. Like, what are we actually up to? And so today we want to share with you a little bit from the Buddhist perspective, a model of consciousness. So it's important to remember it's just a model. And the Buddhist tradition, generally speaking, has not been in the business of making models of reality in order to describe reality. Right? So there's a very important difference with the way we use models in Buddhist practice is very different from how we use models in the scientific endeavor. So we're not trying to describe reality. So if we're not trying to describe reality, then what are we doing? Well, the whole point of it is to see if there's a way of understanding our consciousness which can help us to suffer less. So the whole point of what we're doing, even when we sort of map our consciousness, is to suffer less, or to know how to handle suffering in a more skillful way, and to cause less suffering. So there's an important technical term in Buddhist thought and philosophy, which we're going to rely on a lot, which is a formation. So we know that we also have a tendency to think in terms of nouns, and in terms of we sort of reify things. We reify things in our consciousness, in the world, and they become very solid entities. So the beauty of the concept of formation is that we can start to see that things are not things, but things are processes, and they're always in the process of arising, and they're always in the process of changing. So this flower, we say flower, and it sounds like it's a definite thing, but once we start looking at it a little bit more carefully, we might notice that it's more of a verb than a noun. It's a flowering. It's an unfolding, constantly changing process and a coming together of many, many causes and conditions. So it's a formation which is made of everything else. Right? We know that the flower is made of the water, it's made of the earth. Actually, it's because it's an orchid, it's very much dependent on fungal symbiosis. Right? We know orchids can't survive without their collaborative partners, fungi. It's made of the light. It's made of air. It's made of oxygen, carbon dioxide, minerals. And as you look at it and let it fill your consciousness, you might notice that actually this flower that you're experiencing is also made of consciousness. It's a coming together of your eyes and something. It's an experience, not a thing which is completely separate and outside of you. So, we have this word, formation, which means something which is formed from many, many different sources, many different things coming together. This is going to help us. I'm going to draw a picture. So in Buddhist psychology, we speak of at least 8 different kinds of consciousness. And the one that we most often think about is called mind consciousness. And we can put that here. So this is what we think of as our conscious mind. And in Buddhist psychology, we say that this mind arises on the basis of another kind of consciousness, which we call store. Now, in neuroscience, they identify a kind of consciousness called background consciousness, which is always operating, even when you are deep in dreamless sleep. It's operating even when you're in a coma. It's maintaining homeostasis. It's the kind of consciousness that can, if you are, for example, asleep and you get too cold, it can send an instruction to your body to pull up the blanket, and you don't have to, your mind consciousness is not involved in that. It's a kind of automatic pilot that's always functioning in the background. But it would be important to remember that store consciousness in Buddhist psychology is not equivalent to background consciousness. Background consciousness is just a part of store. So store is vast, and sometimes it's spoken of. It's equated with the unconscious. So there's the unconscious mind that Freud speaks of. There's the collective unconsciousness of Jung, but it's not that either. It's more than that as well. But it has it's not totally individual, and it's not totally collective. So what's the point of all this, and what does it have to do with handling our difficult emotions and our suffering? Well, the idea is that store is the part of our consciousness in which there is it's like a repository of potentials, of all the potentials. Those potentials can also be called seeds. And all the seeds exist in store consciousness as potentials which we shouldn't try to locate exactly in space and time. So we know that there is within us the potential for compassion, the potential for joy, the potential for awakening. Sometimes it's there, and sometimes it seems to be not there. But we don't want to qualify it as non-existent when it's not there. Sometimes we don't feel joy, but it doesn't mean that joy is non-existent. It just means that it hasn't manifested yet in that moment. So there's a beautiful image which is of the waves on the ocean. So you see sometimes the wave is high, sometimes the wave is low, and sometimes the surface of the ocean is very still. But we don't say, because we can't see the wave, that the wave is non-existent. We know that the wave is a phenomenon which arises out of many causes and conditions coming together on the basis of the ocean, the water. The wave is a potential. It's a formation which can manifest from the ground of water. So the ground is always there in some sense, the ground of our consciousness, this storehouse, and in it there are many, many different potentials. And we can think of those as these seeds which are lying kind of dormant. And sometimes, dependent on many causes and conditions coming together, they manifest as a formation, something like a flower. So the causes and conditions in our environment, what's happening around us, what kind of environment we're in, what kind of people we're with, what kind of thoughts we are thinking, all of these can be contributing causes that become part of this, that sort of trigger this formation to arise. Right now we are surrounded by people who are sitting very still, who are allowing themselves to relax. We are allowing ourselves to take care of ourselves, And that is, these are all conditions for many beautiful seeds to be watered in our consciousness and for them to come up. So these potentials which in other environments and other circumstances may not have a chance to come up, now perhaps they can come up. So mindfulness is a seed in our consciousness. The energy of being aware of what is going on, the energy that allows us to be aware of what is going on inside and around us, is a mental formation. It's a function of mind consciousness, which is of noticing right now, how am I doing? How am I feeling? I can notice how I'm feeling in my body. Is there tension? Is there ease? How am I feeling in my emotions? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel at peace? Do I feel some uncertainty, something else? There is a capacity we have of noticing, of being aware of what is going on inside of us, which we call mindfulness. It's also the energy that allows us to be aware of what is going on around us. And we can call on mindfulness at any moment to come up from its potential form as a seed and to become manifest as a mental formation, shining light on everything that's going on inside of us and around us. So when we have, when something else has been triggered in our mind consciousness, something like perhaps despair, which we know can come up from time to time, knowing what we know, then it's very good to know how to take care of our despair, how to handle it. And one thing is we don't want to leave it alone. Despair is also a kind of flower. It comes up and it can kind of take up all of the space in our mind. So we want to know what kind of, how we can accompany our despair, how we can take good care of it. So when despair is there, we may want to touch another seed, the seed of mindfulness, and invite it to come up and to embrace the despair. And that's something possible. This energy of mindfulness is very tender, it's very gentle. It doesn't judge. It has the quality of a mother. It knows how to embrace with love everything that is there in our mind. So practically, how to activate this seed of mindfulness? Right? There's some very simple things that we can do. Let's say that something has been touched in our consciousness by reading the news or having a difficult conversation, and we notice that we're a bit jangled, a bit disturbed. Very, very simple practice is to say hello. This is a way to activate mindfulness in our consciousness. It's very, very simple, very practical. You say, oh, hello. Hello, my sorrow. Hello, my pain. And the situation already is different. There is a quality, there are sort of internal properties of some mental formations that carry a kind of conviction with them. Our despair is often very overconfident, is very sure that it's the truth, that this is a good and true assessment of the situation. And one of the things that we can do is to invite a kind of question mark. So not to be so sure that what it's telling us is the truth. And in order to do that, mindfulness allows us to create this space around the feeling where we notice that there's more than just that feeling, that we are more than just that feeling. So by just saying hello, we're creating a new kind of situation internally. It sounds very, very simplistic, but actually it's a very powerful practice. So let's say that seed has come up, and then you say, oh, hello. And in that hello, there's already the quality of tenderness, of love, of compassion. It's not cold or harsh, or it's not trying to suppress the feeling. It's allowing that feeling to be there, but noticing that there's space around that feeling. I am not only this feeling. So you can use a very simple phrase to do this. It's very practical. Say, oh, there is a part of me that is feeling despair. And there is a part of me which is aware of the energy of despair in me. So already the situation is totally different. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed with despair, which is a kind of, we're setting ourselves up when we say things like that, because it sounds like the truth. It sounds like that's the whole of our reality, that there is despair, it's occupying all of our internal space, and we are overwhelmed. So just by changing that internal narrative to, there is a part of me which is touching despair, and there is another part of me which has the capacity to be aware of and to embrace that energy of despair, the situation is totally different. So we already have gained a little margin of freedom. And that's what this is all about. It's regaining our freedom. Our freedom not to be pushed, not to be in a constant state of just reactivity, reacting to these painful feelings that can arise from time to time. We want to regain our sovereignty, regain our freedom. So, when I first heard my teacher offering this practice of saying hello, I sort of thought, okay, it must not be really what he means. He's just sort of, it's just like a metaphor or something. So I'm going to, when seeds arise in my consciousness and manifest, I'm going to just, sit in meditation and be very aware of them and notice them and da-da-da-da. But it took me a while to realize that, no, actually, he's offering us a very, very practical tool, which is literally to say hello. So it's really worth actually trying, actually using words, okay? We're not totally, we can be skillful in using our mind consciousness, using our words. So when we say hello, actually the job is almost already done, because the hello already implies the capacity of saying hello, the capacity of embracing it. It implies that there's something more than just that strong, unpleasant feeling that may be there. Many of our painful feelings, when they come up, they carry with them a lot of conviction. We should know that they have a kind of internal dynamic which makes them want to continue to exist. So if anger has been touched in us, the anger often comes with an internal narrative that justifies its own existence and its continued existence. It's sure that it's right. Our anger often has that quality of being actually kind of righteous. And it's sure that it needs to be paid attention to, and this is how we have to deal with the situation. We have to address it. It's important. Maybe we have to tell somebody. Maybe we have to punish them or make them, admit that they were wrong. It's very sure that it's right and that its version of reality is the true one. So a very, very important part of our practice when dealing with these mental formations that can come up and kind of colonize our mind is to drop the story. And it takes a lot of courage, actually, because the story is so compelling. It seems to be true. But when we know that certainty, that quality of certainty is just, in a sense, a property of anger, it's a property of our despair or our feeling of being the victim in a situation or our depression, the certainty is part of its internal dynamic. And when we notice that, we can go, am I sure? We're creating more space around that energy within us. And sometimes it feels very strange to drop the story, because the story that we're dealing with seems to be the problem, and it seems to be the route to finding the solution as well. If I deal with the story, if I understand it, if I find out, if I understand what happened, what went wrong, then maybe I will be able to find the solution as well. But we have to be really honest, and we have to look, like, how many times in my life when I have been sure of my version of events and I've spoken from that place of anger, how many times did it lead to a peaceful resolution of the situation? And how many times did it lead to actually making the situation worse? I know for myself, when I allow myself to believe the story that my anger is telling me, usually it pushes me to say or do things that I may later regret. It's not actually very productive of peace or of a skillfulness. So I've learned to have that kind of question mark over that certainty. And we can all look into our own experience to see, like, well, is it worth questioning that certainty? And we know we want to take good care of the energy of anger when it arises, or the energy of despair. But we have to be very careful when we are taking care of these formations when they arise, that we're not at the same time watering them even more. So this is something that happens when we start paying attention, we start activating the energy of mindfulness within us. So maybe anger has been triggered, it comes up, and we say, okay, I'm going to be mindful of my anger. And yeah, actually, it's true what he said. That was really wrong. That was really hurtful. He needs to understand that that was really painful for me. And before we know it, that paying attention to the anger, taking care of the anger, has become feeding the anger, watering it, nourishing it, maintaining it. So in order to interrupt that process, it's very, very important to drop the story. So in practice, what that means is firstly noticing that there is a story, that there's a kind of internal monologue going on with all of this energy of certainty and conviction. So we can say hello to that as well. Say, hello, my little story. I know you're there. I'm going to take good care of you, but not just now. Later. It doesn't mean we're not going to deal with the situation. It just means that we know that there are aspects of the situation that are disturbing our internal peace that we need to take care of first. So that takes actually a lot of determination, a lot of courage to drop the story. And to come back to the body, the sensations that are arising in the body, provoked by that anger, by that despair, by that sorrow. So let's just enjoy a sound of the bell. And as we hear the sound of the bell, we can right now just check in and see what is going on in the realm of my sensations, of my internal sensations, my internal feelings. It's not exactly emotions, it's actually noticing, how do I feel right now in my gut? How do I feel in my chest, in my throat? These are the places where these emotions, these sensations will often show up behind the eyes. We're kind of checking in with our nervous system. And just noticing without judgment, noticing with a lot of space, what is there? How am I feeling right now? So as mammals, we have this wonderful capacity to soothe ourselves, to take care of what is going on inside of us, and to calm our nervous system. So we know that we have a fight or flight response which can get activated, which manifests as tension, which manifests as an elevated heartbeat, which manifests as maybe feeling suddenly hot or jittery. It can be a kind of sensation of nausea because the sympathetic nervous system, when it's activated, the fight or flight response shuts down digestion, shuts down the kind of relaxation mode of our nervous system, and prepares us for action, for either running or fighting. But we know it's often not the most appropriate response to the situation. Is been very helpful over evolutionary time. It's got us out of a lot of trouble. It's why we're here. So we can be very grateful for that mode of our nervous system. But we know that maybe going into fight or flight is not the best response to getting negative feedback from a colleague. We don't need to respond as if we are being attacked by a grizzly bear. And so knowing that, we can start to get to know and learn about how that actually feels in the body when we are in that mode, how we get activated. And we know that when that fight or flight response is overactivated, it actually goes into shutdown, into sort of the next thing that we can do when we can't defend ourselves in a situation of danger is to play dead. And that's actually a state of our nervous system which is available to us, but which may get kind of stuck in our system, in our way of responding to events. We may feel shut down, emotionally unavailable, kind of numb. And because of the level of collective existential threat that we're facing, that may be something that's happening to us, both individually and collectively, that we're just feeling. We collectively are in so much danger. The nervous system is doing its best to respond to that, but maybe we are sometimes going into that numb shutdown state, or we are in that overactivated kind of hyper-aroused, hyper-vigilant state, constantly ready to fight. So knowing that, we want to kind of befriend all those sensations in our body, know how that actually feels, and then know how to move out of that either overactivated or shut down state back into what we call the window of tolerance, which is this space where we can be relaxed, we can be curious, we can be engaged with what's happening inside and around of us, we can be flexible, and we can respond rather than react. So we have many, many wonderful tools for helping us get out of those sort of either paralyzed states or overactivated states. And one of the most powerful is the breath, which is why we keep coming back to the breath in our practice. So it seems that just paying attention to the breath, activating the energy of mindfulness in our consciousness and noticing the movement of the breath in our body has this self-soothing function. It actually calms the whole nervous system. It restores our kind of equilibrium, our balance, our ability to stay flexibly in the game, as it were. So, let's say something has been triggered in us. We've noticed it. We've noticed that we're agitated, or that we're shut down, or that we're looking for a way to either take action from a place of panic, or I need to do something about this now, right away, immediately, or we're looking for a way to numb or to avoid the sensation. So that might be turning towards some form of consumption or media, or just pulling our phone out of our pocket. There are places that we go when we feel uncomfortable, and we need to know what our habitual response is to these stressors in our life, to these uncomfortable situations. So let's say we've noticed, okay, I don't feel good. There's a powerful story that's occupying my consciousness that's telling me I need to do something about this right away, or I can't deal with this. This is too much. This is impossible. We've gone from there to noticing, okay, this is a story. It's just a story. It may be partly true, but it's probably not the whole truth. So I'm going to temporarily, very gently, kindly put it down. I'm going to drop the story. I'm going to come back to the sensations in my body. I'm going to notice, how does it feel right now? What is the level of tension in my shoulders, in my jaw, in my abdomen? Where am I holding on tight? And we may notice there's a feeling of a certain feeling of discomfort. It's not fundamentally pleasant, right, as a sensation to when these things are activated in us, whether it's despair or sorrow, overwhelm, they're not pleasant. But what we are going to do is establish a kind of non-panic reaction to unpleasant sensations. We're going to get familiar with them and notice that although there's something in us there's something telling us this is too much, this is intolerable, maybe even if I allow myself to feel this, I will die. This is too much for me. What we can invite is a kind of experimental approach. Say, well, okay, there's something in me telling me this is too much for me, but let me check. Let me actually do an experiment and see, is this really that bad? Is it actually life-threatening? Let me be with that feeling a little bit, using the anchor of the breath, just noticing, okay, it doesn't feel comfortable, but maybe I can be with it for 3 breaths. Maybe I don't need to react right away. I can stay with that feeling. And actually, staying with that feeling for 3 breaths may already change the situation considerably. All of these sensations are impermanent. They come and they go. And yet, when they are there, it feels like they will always be there. There's a feeling that it's going to be like that for the rest of time. It's intolerable, it's unbearable. But we know from experience it's not true. So we learn to develop a little bit more patience, a little bit less reactivity, and go, okay, maybe I can stay with this feeling for a little bit. As a mother, taking care of her baby who's crying. This is an image that our teacher offered us as well, and it's very interesting because we can activate the energy of a loving mother within us. We don't have to be a woman because we have many female ancestors. I have my mother in me, I have all my grandmothers in me, and I can call on them to help me to hold what is difficult and uncomfortable to hold. It's amazing to discover that we have that capacity within us when we don't feel at peace, when we don't feel comfortable. There is still a part of us which can hold what is going on. The first time I came to Plum Village, I was 19, and without really knowing it, I was very shut down, very overwhelmed. My mother had just died the year before, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't have many tools at my disposal, any practices to help me deal with the grief. And in fact, I wasn't really feeling anything. I was just totally numb, completely overwhelmed. And as a result of being here in Plum Village, at some point, I got in touch with the grief, and then it was overwhelming in a different way. I would go back to my tent at night and feel like as soon as I wasn't around other people, this black wave of grief would just come up and drown me. And I asked one of the brothers, what can I do? Like, how can I handle this? Well, as long as I'm with people, it's okay. I'm kind of distracted enough in a way to be functional. But as soon as I'm alone, it will come up and I drown. And he kind of just transmitted to me this confidence in the capacity of each of us to hold whatever is arising. He just said to me, you have within you the energy of a mother, of a father, and that energy can embrace and take care of whatever is arising. And he just said it with so much conviction from his own practice and his own experience that he just kind of transmitted that to me, and I received it. And I put it into practice that night when I went back to my tent. The black wave came up and I started drowning in grief. But then I remembered what he had said, and I said, okay, well, let me try, let me see. And what was I doing? I was activating, calling on a potential within me that I hadn't even known was there. And just by calling on it, it manifested in my consciousness, and suddenly the grief was there, and at the same time, there was this incredible capacity of embracing, of being with. And it didn't mean that the grief suddenly was gone and wasn't there anymore, but it had a friend. It was being held. The situation was completely different. The grief is there, but there's also this immense space of love, of kindness, of tenderness. And we have that potential within us to hold with love, with kindness, with tenderness, whatever is arising within us. So we need to learn to call on that whenever we need. So we drop the story, we check in with the sensation, and even if the sensation is difficult and uncomfortable, we can touch this other seed of, it's okay, I can hold this. Yes, there is this sensation, this feeling of pain, and there is also something else. There is also this capacity to embrace and to hold. And during this retreat, we are going to be constantly watering that seed, that potential within us of compassion, of love, of tenderness, of mindfulness. The capacity to recognize, to say hello with a smile, to embrace with tenderness. Everything that we're doing is watering that seed. Whenever we take a breath and we are aware that we're taking a breath, we are using our mind consciousness as the gardener, and we're watering with our attention the seed, the potential in our store consciousness of mindfulness. So maybe that seed hasn't received much water yet in our life, but the wonderful thing is whenever you are doing something and you know that you're doing it, you are watering the seed of mindfulness. It's that simple. When you take a breath and you know you're taking a breath, you are strengthening that potential, that capacity within you for knowing and being aware of what is going on inside and around you. Whenever you take a step and you know and you can feel that you're taking a step, you're watering that seed. Whenever you drink a sip of tea and you know and you're aware and you can feel the sensation of the liquid on your tongue, you feel the warmth of the cup. All of these things are nourishing and growing that potential within us. We are very fortunate to be also impermanent, to have the nature of plasticity. That everything within our consciousness can learn and grow. And the function of our mind consciousness is to take care of the garden, which is store consciousness. Store consciousness can be like the earth, with many, many seeds in it. And some of those seeds, when they come up, they are not exactly, we don't want to say that they're negative or bad, but they can be unskillful responses to the situation. We know when the seed of anger comes up, it leads to sometimes unskillful responses. It's not bad, we're not judging it, but we want to selectively water the capacities and potentials in our consciousness which are more adaptive, more skillful, better at handling the challenging situations that we are facing. And one of the most powerful ways to help ourselves to embrace the pain and the difficulty that we face is to nourish our joy. When I first encountered this practice, I really underestimated it. I sort of thought it was a bit twee, it's sort of cute, but I want to deal with the difficult stuff. I want to go straight for the trauma, the pain. I want to understand what's happened to me. I want to get to grips with the most difficult things and transform them all. And I didn't realize that actually I didn't have enough stability to do that. My capacity for being with the difficult feelings wasn't yet strong enough. So we need to know our capacity. We need to know what we can handle. And in fact, by nourishing joy, we are increasing that capacity. We are creating a good environment to welcome the difficult things in our consciousness, the challenging situations that we encounter. So how do we do it? How do we give rise to a feeling of joy? How do we give rise to a feeling of happiness? One very simple way, incredibly simple, is just to invoke joy, to remember that it's there as a potential in our consciousness. It's really remarkable. Sometimes it's enough just to remember, oh yeah, joy. And it can come up. Sometimes we need a way to remember it, a way to activate it. And it's very good to make a list, actually. This can be homework. Okay? You can take a piece of paper and actually list all of the things that can bring you joy. And when you've made that list, then you actually need to do those things. So they can be very simple. For me, I have the wonderful good fortune to have some little people in my life, my nephew and niece, and they are filled with joy and wonder and love. And all I have to do is remember them, just see their faces in my mind. And suddenly, their joy is my joy. It's very simple. But if you have any nephews and nieces, little children, grandchildren, just try it now. Can you visualize? You can close your eyes and see their smiling faces and remember what it feels like when they run up to you and hug you with all of their love and innocence and tenderness. No judgment, no fear. I can see some smiles blooming on your faces. So it's very simple way to invoke and to remember the joy that we have as a potential within us. And then you can cultivate that joy by noticing, how does that feel in my body? Where do I feel it in my body? We know that our body is a wonder of the cosmos, is a wonder of life. Our body can also be a source of joy. It can be difficult. Not all of us have a positive relationship with our body. We may have difficult feelings that arise when we think about how we are. But it's very important to get past all of those sort of stories and narratives and just start noticing at the level of sensation, what is going on? Are there pleasant sensations which are available to me in my body? So one very nice thing that you can do is learn to touch the mental formation of joy, to prime the pump by smiling. So usually we think of smiling as a result, as something which is caused by our joy, but it can actually also be the cause of our joy. So we can kind of activate our joy just by smiling. It's not a commercial smile. It's not an outward smile. It's not a selfie smile or a photo smile. It's a little tiny smile. Almost you can feel like it's directed inwards. A smile of kindness. Can you offer yourself a smile of kindness, of tenderness? And then notice how it feels in the corners of your mouth. The physical sensation in your cheeks. Some of you are not actually smiling. Sometimes we think we're smiling, but we're not really smiling yet. It's very interesting to do the experiment. Like, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to actually try and see what is the result of initiating a little smile. How does that feel? And then notice, at least for me, oh, it feels wonderful. It feels very pleasant. Just the physical sensation is like little bubbles. And then the more I pay attention to that, the stronger it gets. It kind of echoes and amplifies. And suddenly, joy is available in a way that it might not have been a few moments ago. And that's not, it's not naive. It's not kind of, it doesn't mean that we are ignoring the difficult things that we have to deal with. It's that we are building our resilience. We're building our capacity to handle skillfully everything that we are facing, everything that's arising. We also need to know how to nourish joy collectively, how to remind each other. So we can do that now as well. We can just turn to our neighbor and I'm going to ask you to take turns, very briefly, maybe one minute each, and one of you will just listen. It's not a conversation, so one of you just listens, and the other one, I invite you to share something that's happened to you recently. It can be in the last week or the last few days or last month that has maybe the most wonderful, inspiring, joyful, enlivening thing that has happened to you in the last few weeks or months. And just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to share, and then you swap. And for the person who's listening, I want you to see, it's going to sound a little bit weird, to see if you can be completely indifferent, totally blank. Right? Because it's not your joy, it's theirs, right? So, how's that going to help you, right? It's their joy, it's not your joy. And we have this idea that, my feelings are mine, your feelings are yours. But this is an experiment to test. Is that actually true? Or are we affected by our environment? Okay, I think we already know the answer, but it's interesting to do the experiment nevertheless. Okay? So try to stay blank and try to notice what happens in your face, in your body, what's coming up, how are you responding, what are you feeling? Okay? Shall we try? Does everyone have a partner? Ding! Okay, thank you. Can you swap now and let the other person share? Ding. So, well, from where I'm sitting, it looks like somehow or other we were able to water the seeds of joy in our consciousness. It's remarkable. This is the work of transforming consciousness, right? Transforming collective consciousness. Can you feel how the energy in the room has shifted? Was anybody able to be completely untouched? One. Oh, bravo. So it's very interesting to see that with one honorable exception, we seem to be permeable. We're very permeable. In fact, what we think of as ourselves may be much less solid than we realize. So the environment that we're in is also contributing, right, to what seeds are being watered, what seeds are being allowed to manifest and occupy our mind consciousness. So we need to be careful and to choose the kind of environment where the beautiful, wholesome seeds get a chance to come up frequently as possible. And there's always things that we can do to increase the things in our environment that cause those good seeds to come up. So it can be just keeping a gratitude journal, noting down 3 things every day for which we can be grateful. There's a very active, powerful way to water those seeds in your consciousness. It can be just doing what we did, sitting down together with friends and asking each other to share what is the most wonderful, inspiring thing that happened to you in the last few days. Because we often tend to be very focused on the problems, dealing with the problems, what's going wrong, what are the solutions, how are we going to do it, how are we going to address this difficult, challenging situation. And we may have a tendency to forget that actually our joy, our well-being, our freshness is part of the solution. It's part of our human resilience. It's part of our capacity to handle the challenges that we are facing as a species. So Plum Village is an environment that has been designed to water all of the beautiful seeds in our consciousness. It's been designed as an environment that, with lots of reminders. So every time we hear a bell, it's a reminder. Yeah, let me check in. How am I doing? Is there tension in my body? Is there tension in my feelings? Am I still chewing a story that's actually watering in me some frustration or despair? Am I rehearsing a situation, a difficult interaction that caused me pain? Can I drop it? Can I drop the story? Can I come back to the sensation of my feet on Mother Earth? The wonder that it is to be alive, to notice the sensations of life in my body. We are the fruit of countless generations, countless iterations of the evolutionary process. We are a wonder of the cosmos. This planet is a flower of the cosmos. The flourishing of life on this planet is there. We can just get back in touch with that for a moment. Like yesterday, it was so wonderful to hear from everybody that for most of you, that's the touchstone. That's the way we refresh ourselves, is just being in touch with nature, going for a walk, taking steps on Mother Earth. And sometimes we know that, but we could also do it more. And we can build in reminders into our daily life to help us to notice the beautiful, wondrous things that are there available for us. I once spoke to a very a wonderful psychiatrist, a very deep thinker, and he said actually one of the most powerful things that he could share with his clients when they were really in a bad state, in a bad way, dealing with depression, was just inviting them to notice the warmth in their hands when they had a cup of tea. Isn't that remarkable? It's so simple, but you can just, instead of gulping down the tea and looking at your phone, you can actually stop and pay attention and notice, oh, this is a pleasant sensation. This is a pleasant sensation. Oh. The thing about our mind is it's primed to pay much more attention to negative stimuli. And the positive ones kind of don't stick. So we actually need to give ourselves a little bit more time with the pleasant sensations to let them sink in. There's a kind of evolutionary bias in our system to be much more alert and responsive to danger and to threat. We're much more easily going to give it our attention. Whereas the positive things, because they're not life-threatening, it's kind of like, okay, well, I don't need to spend energy paying attention to that because, it's not going to, I'm not going to die. It's not compelling enough to draw our attention. So knowing that, we can involve our mind consciousness in the gardening of our mind, and so we get to know that, yes, when I am with something wonderful, like the flame tree outside, there's a wonderful scent, these beautiful pink blossoms. The blossoms themselves are beautiful. It's a wondrous reality, but we have a tendency just to kind of walk by and not let it in. You know the expression, take the time to smell the roses? I mean, that's literally what we have to do. We have to take the time, or make the time, to stop, to let the beauty and the wonder in, and to stay with it a little bit longer than we might habitually do. We might habitually say, okay, well, that's enough of that. I need to get back to work. But just give it another 30 seconds. When you sit down next to the lavender here on the steps, just stop. Stop problem solving. Let it in. Have you taken the time to let the lotus blooms in to your consciousness? Some of you have. But it's interesting to notice what happens when we do that, when we place ourselves in a positive environment. What can come up is actually, fidgeting, nervousness, anxiety. Where's my phone? I need to do something. I need to have a conversation. What we notice is that there's a level of activation in our nervous system, of discomfort, of overwhelm. So the first thing that we encounter may not be completely pleasant, and that's okay. We are developing our capacity to be with the discomfort. It's like our kingdom has been left untended for a while. We've been wandering in the past, in the future, in problem solving, And maybe we haven't had the time to really take care of this, of what is in the present moment, of our sensations, our feelings, these mental formations arising. So it's okay when we start to practice stopping with the bell, with the breath, with our steps, with a cup of tea. It's okay that it doesn't feel good right away, necessarily. We need to have a little bit of stubbornness, a little bit of determination to stay with it. So we also need to know our limit. If there's something triggering in our system, if it's too strong, if there's painful memories from the past coming up, we need to know how to switch our attention to something nourishing and something positive as well. So we need to be very skillful in what we, how we deal with the painful things that are arising. But by putting ourselves in an environment where so many of these positive seeds can be watered, we can have the courage to stay with the discomfort a little bit and to allow ourselves to settle, to allow ourselves to relax, and not to be trying to fix immediately what is painful or unpleasant, but just to say hello, to say, it's okay for you to be there. You can be there as long as you want. I'm okay. Like a mother is not impatient with her baby when the baby cries. Oh, sometimes, but if, in good circumstances, the mother can have the capacity to be okay, to be at peace, to be relaxed, even though the baby is upset. So there's a part of us which is upset, and there's a part of us which is okay. And we are learning to call on that part of us, to activate that part of us, which is this potential. We can just touch it and it comes up and it's there. We need to learn to do that and to help each other to do that as well. We are learning to regulate our own nervous systems, and we're also learning to co-regulate. So when we have been triggered by something, and something is jangling our nervous system, in this environment, it may be enough just to look around, to open our eyes and see, oh, look, the person next to me is able to take steps in peace and freedom. And because we have this mirroring capacity, that can be enough just to bring us back into that window of tolerance, that window of possibility, of openness, of curiosity, of kindness. This afternoon we will sit in circles, in what we call sharing circles, and that may be something that we experience as well. Maybe some pain comes up, but by seeing that together as a group, we can be with the pain and not be overwhelmed by it. That helps us to find that place within us, which is also not overwhelmed. So this is the business of transforming consciousness. And we know that our individual consciousness is made of the collective consciousness. And our collective consciousness is made of our individual consciousnesses. So when we take care of our capacity, of our resilience, of these beautiful, wholesome seeds within us, we're also taking care of the collective. When we are in touch with a painful feeling as it's arising within us, I think we know that it's only partly individual. That pain that we feel, at least for me, I have the conviction that what I'm feeling in my system is also an expression of the collective pain, which is the pain of humanity, but also the pain of our brothers and sisters in the non-human realm, the pain of Mother Earth. And actually, it might seem at first that if I allow myself to open that door to the collective suffering, it might seem like I'm going to be in even more trouble because it's going to be even more overwhelming, even more vast. But by seeing that I am more than just this body, I am more than just this separate individual consciousness, I'm at the same time increasing the space of embrace. What is embracing this unpleasant feeling, this painful feeling? It's not just me, it's also you. It's also the trees, the sky, the earth. Our consciousness has this incredible ability to expand. We can remember our vastness. Just by remembering that we are the conscious expression of life on Mother Earth. Just by opening our eyes and seeing the sky and seeing the trees around, giving that the time to sink in, we can be with what is painful, at the same time be with what is glorious and wonderful, and to see that all of this, these wonders of life that we are surrounded by are the embracing. The joy, the awe, the wonder that we can touch is the capacity of embracing the pain and the sorrow. So whenever we practice eating in mindfulness, looking deeply into the food that we serve, seeing that this food is also formed from so many causes and conditions, that a single grain of rice is the ambassador of the entire cosmos. The whole cosmos has come together to offer us this food and is then becoming part of us. That when we are doing these simple practices, we are transforming our consciousness. We are touching into our vast interbeing dimension, and that is transforming at the same time our capacity to be with the difficult situations, the pain that we feel. So on every level, the practice is interconnected. We can start seeing that every aspect of the practice that we are offering throughout these days has its role, has a function in building this resilience and capacity. That's why we're so happy that you have been kind enough to offer us a few days of your life to come and be with us, because often we are invited to conferences and places here and there, and we're told, okay, you can do half an hour workshop. And it's very difficult to offer all of the bounty that we have, all of these different interrelated practices in such a short space of time. So I really just want to thank you all for taking the time and to allow yourselves to start to see how all of these different practices fit together to transform, to loosen our notions of separation, of individualism, which we know is at the root of so much of our current situation of suffering on the planet. We are actively working with that level of conviction in our self-stories, in our collective consciousness. We're loosening it. We know that when we are in a situation of anger, despair, or overwhelm, we have a tendency to collapse, to become quite small, to become quite self-involved, and certain that we are right, and that everybody else needs to understand the ways in which we're right in order for the situation to change. So by just saying, am I sure? By dropping the story, we are allowing ourselves the possibility to be, to expand again. To start noticing, yeah, okay, I have that energy of, I'm right, this is important, this is the most important thing going on. And also, there's the noticing, there's the mindfulness, there's the tenderness, the embrace, there's what I call the environment, which is actually part of my consciousness. So we can expand again. And that expansion is also part of the holding of the pain. So thank you all for bearing with me on this little exploration of, I hope, what are some very practical techniques, things that we can apply. And the invitation is really to see in these next few days, can we apply these practices when the powerful stories come up within us, when the overwhelming feelings come up within us? Can we remember to say hello? Can we remember to notice there is a part of me which feels like that, and there's a part of me which can embrace it? Can we remember to nourish our joy and to allow our joy to be with the pain, to be the embracing of the pain? Can we remember to touch the wonders of life around us and give them enough time to sink in, to be the holding of the pain and the sorrow as well? Thank you. Let us enjoy 3 sounds of the bell to close.